Okay, Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach Dalet in Baba Basra, as we learned for Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asun Batzar V'Shivya. Says the Mishnah on daf Samach Dalet. This is a continuation of the first Mishnah in the parak where we said if you sell your house, you don't sell the inner room or the back room, you don't sell the balcony, you don't sell the roof if it's got a border around it, a fence. Also, Lois above says you don't sell the well or the cistern, as we've explained what bor and deuce are, but we're going to explain it. Today's Gemara is going to actually say it. We referred to it before. So that those things are not included with the house unless you, of course, you specifically include them. So Lois above says also include even though you said well, I'm selling the house, I'm selling the depth and the height. Now we said yesterday, Rav Dimi explained that if you don't mention the depth and the height, the person who sells it can actually dig under the house. I'm just selling you the house, not what's underneath it, not what's on top. I could build on top, I could dig underneath. So by saying that by saying that, you include the area under the house and above it. But even though you said that does not include the well or the cistern that's around the house, that's kept for the water source. But Rabbi Kiva says this famous line that we've had before. And the person who sells it, again, you don't sell unless you mention, like we said yesterday, unless you mention not only not only the depth, but you also say, I'm also including the deepest depths. He says, what is the lashon there in the Gemara? Not only I have to say mitahom ara, from the depths of the earth until the heights of the heaven, unless you say those words, right? Those words come to include everything. Right? If you say mitom arabad ramakia, then you have to, in order to include everything, you'd have to say those. If you just say that just means the area underneath it. If you say from the depths of the ground, yeah, that in addition to using the words depths and heights, use from the lowermost depths of the ground until to the heights of heaven, in addition to the Umka, then you include the bor v'dus. But if you didn't say that, you don't include it. Not only is it not included, but the seller has no way to get to his bor v'dus. He sold his house, but he didn't sell the well. How is he going to get to the well? He has to go through the purchasers. Purchaser now owns the property, so he has to go through his property to get to his own bor. He's got to buy it. In other words, because he sells it, as we'll see, the Gemara is going to come out. We've explained it before. Because he sells it generously, that means I sold you everything in the house. I'm selling you the house and the land around it, but not the well. So the well belongs to me, the seller. How is he going to get there now? He's got to purchase the rights to access his well. That's what Kiva says. No, if I sold you the house and I did not sell you the well, I obviously have to have a way to get there. So I didn't mean to sell you the path to get there. I don't have to buy from the purchaser that I just sold the property. I don't have to go back and buy back from you the rights to walk on your ground or buy a path. Either I own a path to it or I'm going to buy the rights to the path to the well. You don't have to do that. So this is the machlokes for Rabbi Kiva and Chacham that we're going to be discussing at length. Rabbi Kiva, we're going to say, the Gemara is going to give different opinions, but we're going to come out. Rabbi Kiva's reason is when I sell something, I sell it generously. I meant to give you everything, all the land. I'm just keeping the well for myself. If I didn't say mita homrik ara ad rom rakia, if I didn't say those words, okay, I'm keeping the well for myself, but I have no access to it unless I buy it back from you now. Because when I sold you the land generously. Whereas the Chum say, no, when you sell it sparingly. You don't mean to include everything. Obviously, I meant to keep for myself the way to get there. That's the first part of the Mishnah. Then Umar Rabbi Kiva, even though Rabbi Kiva says that the seller has to buy back the rights to get to as well, Rabbi Kiva's motive is mancha amalo chutz me'elu. Let's say he said specifically, listen carefully, he said specifically, I'm selling you the house, not including the well. Why did he have to say not including the well? It's not included anyway, we just said. Unless you use the words like Rav Dimi explained, mitahom arad rom rakia, you don't get the well anyway. So why do I have to say I'm not including the well? Okay, when he said Rabbi Kiva's mancha amalo chutz me'elu shein sarach likach derech. There he doesn't have to buy back. In other words, because he said something extra. We saw yesterday, when you say extra words that are not necessary, what are they for? Either the words are extra or they don't make any sense, like in the case of the Levi saying, I want 10% of the future crops as my share of Meiser Rishon, how can you sell him something which isn't here yet? It must mean that he meant the land. But we saw also when you say extra words, like from the depths of the ground all the way up to the heights of the heaven, I meant to include the well also. So here too, he didn't have to say anything. I sell you the house, the well's not included. Did it say anything there in the contract? I'm including the well? No. So the well's not included. Why do I have to say I'm excluding the well? To tell you that he's also getting back, those extra words tell you that I'm also reserving for myself the path to lead to the well. That's what he's observing. But keep his motive to the Chachamim. If the seller wrote, I'm selling the house with accepting these things, except for the well, I'm not including that, then he doesn't have to buy it there because he said those extra words. According to the Rabbanan, he wouldn't get the well, he wouldn't have to buy back the route anyway, the path to get to because the Rabbanan, if you sell the house and you didn't sell the well with it, you own a path anyway to get the well. How are you supposed to get to your well? The answer is that you sold it sparingly. I didn't mean to sell you the path leading to the well, even though the well's not included, but the path leading to the well, according to Rabbanan, also is not included. How else would I get there? So according to Rabbanan, you didn't have to say I'm selling the house with the exception of the well. The well was excluded anyway. Not only was the well excluded, but the path to the well was also excluded. But he just wanted to be very clear about it. According to Rabbanan, he's just adding that on. But the Rabbi Akiva's motive to Rabbanan that in this case the seller does not have to purchase back a path to his well.
This fish of land above and here,
Yeah.
Above and below. It doesn't say that he sold him the land all around the house. No, it says underneath and the air above.
Right, but if he say in a Hanami, and if the Mishnah doesn't say that yet, the Mishnah says that Rav Dimi explained that the pshat of the Mishnah is if he would say from the depths of the land to the heights, then it would include everything around there too, including the well. But if he didn't say that, the well's not included. That's what the Mishnah says, that the well is not included, even though he said umkavaruma, even though he said the depth and the height. That only means that the seller cannot dig underneath there, nor could he build on top. But the well is not included unless he would say to home, like we said before, like Rav Dimi explained yesterday. The Mishnah is not talking about that case.
The path to the well
Yeah.
can also be the path to lead into the house. So you have a machlokas there.
He doesn't have the house anymore. The seller sold the house. Yeah.
So
whatever path, yeah,
owns the house, needs a path to get into his house.
he owns the path to his house. The purchaser bought the house and the land around it if there's a path leading to it. Presumably the well was not right on the border of Rosh Hashanah. The well was somewhere on his property. So the well, which is still owned by the seller, how is the seller going to get there? According to Rabbi Akiva, he has to buy back the path because when he sold it generously, including the path. He has to buy it back. Now, according to Rabbanan, he didn't sell it so generously. He sold it more strictly, more sparingly. Let's say the seller did not sell the house. He only sold the well. I'm selling you the well. So, Rabbi Akiva, if I sold you the well, obviously I meant to include the path too, because I sold it generously. How are you going to get to the well if I didn't sell you the path to it? No, I sold you the well. That's the well. Take a helicopter and get there, or buy back to me also the rights to get there. I didn't sell you the path leading there. Again, Rabbi Akiva goes with this idea that he sells it generously. But we're going to see the Gemara is going to debate: is the pshat in the Rabbanan Rabbi Akiva that the machlokes is it because according to Rabbi Akiva he sells it generously, and according to Rabbanan not, or otherwise? Yes, Rabbeinu Kashli. So first he had a kasha. What does the words mean? Bor v'dus. Yes, Rabbeinu Kashli. He asked him this question. What's the difference between a well and a dus? But bor and a dus, they're both the same thing. Aren't they both the same thing? There's drushes about this, that bor without the vav is bet reish, and dus is the lashon of the chacham, and bor is in the Torah. Yiftachish bor. You don't find the word dus in the Torah. The dus is Aramaic. So bor is lashon of the Torah, and dus is the lashon of the Gemara, Aramaic. And if you take away the vav in each case, the bor is half of the dus, because bet versus dalid is half, and reish versus tuf is half. Because the lashon chum is always larger, double. I'll drush about that kiflaim, but that's not what the Gemara says. That's not what our Gemara says. Our Gemara says like this: Rabbeinu had a kasha. What's the same form of those? Rabbi Tasfor told them Rabbeinu Tashmal, bring it from the Tanya. They're both wells in the ground that hold water. The The bore is just with digging out. In other words, it's simply like Rashbam says, it's strong, solid earth. So when you dig it, it stands by itself. Just put water in there and it stands by itself. The hadus b'binyan. The dus is the same thing. It's a well, but it's lined, it's faced with stone, presumably because you dug it in soft earth, which would collapse if you didn't line it with stone. So the bore is just digging out, and the dus is where it's faced with stone. Now, that was Ravina who had this kasha, and Rabbi Tosor gave him an answer. Then we have a similar thing, the exact same story, but with two different rabbis. Yosef Ravashi kasha. Ravashi also had the similar question. Hainu bor, hainu dus. Aren't they both the same? Why does the Mishnah tell us both? Just say lo as a bor or lo as a dus, whichever one you want to use. Lashon ivrit from the Torah, a bor, or lashon dus for the Chachamim. Amalei Mark Shisha, brother of Chisla Ravashi. Mark Shisha, the son of Rav Chisda. Maybe we've learned many times. Mark Shisha, Pashup Shot was that he was the older son of Rav Chisda, but remember Tosas at Daf Zayin Bay says that two different Pshatim. Some say that Mark Shisha was the younger son who was born to Rav Chisda in Rav Chisda's old age. Either way, Mark Shisha was the son of Rav Chisda, and he said to Ravashi, "You have an answer. You're not sure what bor, why it say bor and dus. I'll tell you why." Both are both in the karka. These are both pits. Bor is a pit and dus is a pit. Elisha bor b'chafira. The bor is dug out, presumably, like you said, with strong earth, so it doesn't need the stone facing. It stands on its own, and it's got water. V'hadus b'binyan, and the dus is like what we call a cistern. Both cases we're talking about a well, a pit. These are both water sources where you keep your water. But the bor is what we call a pit, just dug out dirt, and it stands on its own without a facing of stone inside. And the dus is b'binyan with stone. So again, now we know that the two. Why do you have to tell me both? Why do you have to tell me bor and dus? Okay, fine. Bor and dus are two separate things, but they're both wells. They're both places where you keep water. So tell me, if I sell the house, I don't sell the bor. If I sell the bor, I'll sell. If the bor is not included, neither is a dus. What's the difference? They're two different kinds of wells. Why does he have to tell me both? So Rashbam explains like this. Take a look at the Rashbam at the bottom of the page. 4 lines from the bottom of the page. If we would only say bor, you know what's not included? The bor is not included because it's not a structure. It's simply dug out. Dus is with stone. It's a ke'ein device. That's like the house. If I sell the house, it's made out of stone. Presumably, if the cistern is made out of stone also, that's also included. It's part of the house. I might think that's included, but I'll buy it. So therefore, you have to tell me no, that this is also not included. Itana dus, if you only tell me dus, mishum de binyan b'fnei atzmo. You know why the dus is not included in the house? That's what I might think, because that's a separate structure. I'm selling you the house. I'm not selling you the garage, or I'm not selling you the dus, which is a separate structure. B'chashiv, it has its own significance. Av a bor lo chashiv, but a bor is just a little pit. Maybe that's considered attached to the house. It's considered like part of the house. So usually, ever have to tell me in both cases that whether it's a bor, whether it's a dus, whether it's a structure, whether it's just a dugout pit, or whether it's lined with stone. In both cases, it's not sold with the house unless you specifically say it is sold with the house. Our machlokus in the Mishnah is everybody agrees it's not sold. The question is, do you have to buy a path? Does the seller who sold the house, right, and he kept for himself the pit, does he have to buy back the path to the pit or not? Rabbi Kiva says yes, because he sold it generously. Rabbanan say no. What is that really the reason for the machlokas? Now the Gemara is going to debate that. So, yeah.
I always thought a bore, a well, has water that comes up, you dig down, you hit water.
It could be.
And a cistern is something that you bring water in from outside for storage.
Could be either way. Either makes no difference. Makes no difference. In both cases, they contain water. It makes a difference if the water's coming from the ground. You dig deep enough, you'll get the ground. But you could have a cistern too, where you dug it down, not where you bring it in. In other words, both are valid. They're both pits of water. Whether the water came naturally from under the ground or whether you poured water in there or rainwater, whatever. Either way, it's a bore. The difference between bore is simply is it dug out or is it stone?
What do I need to know specifics, whether it's dug out or not?
That's what we just said. We said because if you would only say it's dug out, so you might say that's not included when I sell the house because it's simply dirt, but it's simply dirt. But the dus, which is a structure, it's got stone in there. Maybe that's like the house. I sold you all the stone works of the house. Maybe that would be included too. Kamashma, no. And if you only tell me the case of the dus, I'd say, oh, you know why the dus is not included? Because it's a separate structure. It's a structure on its own. But the bore, which is not a separate structure, simply dug out. It's like you dug it next to the house. It doesn't mean anything. It's part of the house. Kamashma, in both cases, when I sell the house, the bore or the dus is not included. That's why he tells you both. But the bore and the dus are two kinds of pits.
Barn over here and
Right.
those are included.
Those are not included. That's what we're saying. They're not included. No, they're not included. Okay, says the Gemara a couple lines from the bottom of the page. So that's the machlokas between Rabbi Kiva. Everybody agrees that the bore is not included unless you specifically included it. Everybody agrees it's not included. But do I have to buy back the path? Does the seller have to buy back the path or not? Kiva says that. Say no. So the Gemara is a different gears over here. The Gemara says, "Bepiska and Esarach." He says, "What's the machlok? My love, what's the machlok between Rabbi Kiva and the Chachamim?" Rabbi Kiva suffer, like we said, mocher buying yafa mocher. Person sells it generously. So I included the path too in my sale. When I sold you the house, I sold you all the land around, including the path leading up to the bore. I just didn't sell you the bore, and therefore I have to buy it back. I have to buy the path back. Rabbanan suffering mocher buying raw mocher. Whereas Rabbanan say no. When you sell it sparingly. You sell it cheaply. You're not including too much. You're just including the bare minimum. So I didn't include. When I sold you the house and I kept myself the bore, I meant to keep the path to it myself. And therefore, from this Mishnah, where you see the general machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and the Chachamim, that in other cases too, when you sell something and it's a question, is this included or not? You know what? Rabbi Kiva says everything is included because you sell it generously. And the Chacham say, no, when you sell it, things are not included. You sell it very sparingly. Where do we have this machlokas? Rashbam points out we had before. Let's say I sell you a tree. I'm not the land around it. I just sold you a tree. And then the tree dies. Do you have the rights to plant another tree there or not? So we say before Rashbam in the second line, Rabbi Kiva, the person who bought the tree also has the little piece of land in which the tree grew. So if that tree dies, he can plant another tree there because he owns that little piece of land. Why? Because when I sold you the tree, I sold it generously. Not just the physical tree, but the little bit of land around it too. Right? And if it dies, you get another one. You can plant another one. Rabbanan say no. I sold you the tree. That's it, the tree. You didn't get anything else. The tree dies, you don't have the rights to build another one. Again, because Rabbanan would say that when you sell it very sparingly. So another we say in general, Rabbi Kiva, Tamei, in general, we say this throughout the Gemara. Rabbi Kiva holds you sell generously. And Rabbanan say not, mehelcha, that's takalur, not from this Mishnah. Isn't that the pshat in our Mishnah? That Rabbi Kiva says you have to buy back the path because you sold it generously, and the Rabbanan say otherwise. The Gemara says, no, who says that's a machlokas in our Mishnah? Mimai. Who says that's a machlokas? Dilma. Maybe this is the machlokas. Rabbi Kiva says, you know why Rabbi Kiva says in our Mishnah you have to buy back the path? Because the purchaser looks at it from the purchaser's point of view. I put this money, right? I'm paying for this land, and now you're going to walk on my land? It's like when I got married, I said, this guy says, you want to rent this apartment? Yeah, but this room is mine. What do you mean? I'm renting the house and you're going to walk through my house to get to your room? Does that make any sense? Can you rent? Yeah, you rent the house from somebody. The guy says, okay, I'm renting you the house here, so everything is such, but I'm keeping one room for myself. So what do you mean? You can come into my house in the middle of the night whenever you feel like and go to his room? That's what the guy's saying here too. Maybe Rabbi Kiva's reason is that the purchaser says, listen, I'm buying this land. I'm buying the house and the land with the land there. You're going to walk through my land to get to your pit? Maybe that's Rabbi Kiva's reason. Rabbi Kiva says, therefore, the purchaser says, you can't just walk through my land. You better take a helicopter to get to your pit or buy back the rights from me. Maybe I'll limit your rights. You can only come between 8 and 10 in the morning, something like that. I could make any deal I want. So Dilma, Rabbi Kiva, time of Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva Savar, I think the Lashon is Dilma B'Hakamifagid. Rabbi Kiva Savar, Ein on the Matzushin Mosovi Duswacher. I don't want to pay for something, then you can trample on my land, you can go on my land. Rabbanan who say that the path in the sale is not included. I'm sorry, that the path is included rather. that what you can get to the a person doesn't want to say, again, the sell looking at it for the seller's point of view. I'm going to sell you this. I'm keeping the boar for myself, and I have to fly through the land to get to my. Maybe looking at it from the seller's point of view. I don't want to take money. I'm selling you something, but then to get to what I left over for myself, I got to fly there. So maybe that's the reason for the mission, not because selling generously or not selling generously. Just look at the psychology over here. The purchaser doesn't want to buy land and then say you have the rights to walk on my land. I bought the land, and the seller says I'm not going to sell this, and my pit, which is over there, I have to fly there. Looking at it from that point of view, let me say, okay, so maybe you can't learn from there. Look in the safe of our Mishnah. Machar la'achar, safe of the Mishnah also we had. The end of the Mishnah said, if let's say the seller sold the pit to somebody else, Rabbi Kiva says, the purchaser doesn't have to buy a path. I sold you only the pit. How am I supposed to get? How's the purchaser supposed to get to the pit? Okay, I meant to include the path too. Okay, Rabbi Kiva says, he doesn't have to buy. The purchaser having bought the pit doesn't have to buy a path to it. He's entitled to go. The Chum says, no, he has to buy that. My law, but to here in the Bach puts in a little bit more of a gear, so he puts in an extended piece of the Gemara. My law, he sold it generously. I sold you the pit and I sold you the path with it. How would you get to it otherwise? And Rabbanan Sabri mocher ba'ayin ra mocher. May the Rabbanan say, no, I sold you the pit, only the pit. I didn't sell you anything else. And now the Shitas are reversed. Now the person who owns the pit, according to Rabbi Kiva, doesn't have to purchase a path because he got it when he bought it. And according to Chachamim, he says he does have to purchase it because I sold you only the pit. I didn't sell you the path to it. And Gemara says, no. Maybe that's not the. So therefore, what's the reason why? Why do the Rabbanan say that if I sell you the pit, you get the path with it too? Presumably because I sold it to you generously. And why do the Rabbanan say if I sold you the pit, you don't get the path? Because I didn't sell it to you generously. So there's your proof that that's the machlokus over here in our Mishnah throughout. And this is the source throughout Shas for Rabbi Kiva saying selling it generously and the Rabbanan saying otherwise. No, maybe this is machlokus. Rabbi Kiva Savar Basar Dait Lokech is very simple. You look at the das of Lokech. Lokech is buying a pit. Obviously, if I'm buying the pit, I want access to the pit. So therefore, Rabbi Kiva says, when I sold you the pit, I sold you the access to it as well. Access to it. Oh, that's separate. That's separate. Did you ever buy a car and they included the wheels and the steering wheel? And says, oh, you want the underproof rusting and you want that's extra. Oh, you want the yeah, you want the jack? You want the extra stuff with it? You know? It depends on the model. A lot of them don't. Yeah. There you go. I thought it had a spare tire. I thought it came with a steering wheel, you know. The answer is that these kind of tricks are played all along. You know, what's included, what's not included. You want the path through that costs more money. Now you should have said something. All these issues are talking about there's a machlokas here. There's a fight. If they both agree, there's nothing to talk about. They both agree. Okay. But we're talking about when there's a fight, what's included, what's not. You weren't specific. The Chama says, Rabbi Kiva said, look at it from the purchaser's point of view. How would I buy a pit without buying the path to it? Obviously, I meant to include that, so that we include the path. And the Rabbanan say, no, I only want to sell you the pit. You want the path, that costs extra. That's like the jack or the spare tire. That's extra. You want that? How are you supposed to change your tire if you get stuck? Well, too bad. Call the AAA, call Yedidim, whatever it is, you know. Some of us did the Mochazlina. Maybe that's machlok. So again, how do we know that the machlokas here is either do you sell stuff generously according to Kiva, according to Rabbanan, reverse? Maybe from the next Mishnah. Now look at that's not the very next Mishnah. If you have in your Gemara, look at Daf Hayomi, which we're going to have next week. There we're talking about when you sell a field. There's a few Mishnahs here in between. On Samaches and Beis, there's a Mishnah that says if you sell a field, what's included? You sell the stones, whatever, you sell the reeds, whatever is included. Then a Mishnah goes on at the top of Ayin Aleph, but if you sell a field, any bore, any pit there is not included. Below Asagas, here he doesn't say dus, notice. He says the bore. Below Asagas, nor the wine press, below Sashavach, nor a bird house. whether they are desolate or inhabited, in others whether they're included or not. But says you got to buy a path. You see, if I sold you a field, you don't, and not including the bor, not including the goods, in other words, those the seller retained for himself, but he has to buy. Again, the seller sells it generously. So I sold you that field, right? The pit's not included, the wine press is not included, the birdhouse is not included. Those are separate structures. But so I kept them for myself. But you own the field now. The purchaser owns the field. Now the seller has to buy back from the purchaser the rights to get to his bar or his gat or his shobach. So here you see the same. Why did this Mishnah tell me the same thing? Yachar is telling me the same thing. What's the chiddush over here? Must be that he's trying to emphasize that according to Bekiva, he sells it generously. According to Chachamim, it's not because of, a person doesn't want to put his money down and then have somebody trample his field. Again, back in our Gemara here on Amid Beis. I'm just quoting the Mishnah we just saw in Ayanal. When you sell the field, you don't include the pit or the wine press or the bird cage. Right? Whether they are not in use, or whether they're in use, what do I need this case for? We already said the same thing by a house. What's it if I sell a house or if I sell a field? Tell me that the bor is not included. What do you have to tell me the same thing for? That even though the reasons we said before don't apply, maybe a guy says, explaining that, if you tell me the reason it's the same as we said before, maybe Rabbi Kiva's reasoning is that the purchaser doesn't want to purchase something and have somebody trample on my field or trample. That's why, according to Rabbi Kiva, that's why the purchaser gets the path too. The seller has to buy it back from him. Why? Because the purchaser says, I'm not going to buy something and have you trample on it. And the Chacham's reason is that no, the seller doesn't want to sell something and then have to fly to get to his bor. So he meant to keep the path himself. But that's what we saw from the first mission already. That can't be the reason. What are you teaching me the same thing as we saw before? In other words, from our Mishnah, from the house, in the case of the house, maybe the reasons are not because of ayin yafa or ayin ra. The reasons are like we just described. But from the next Mishnah in ayin aleph, or the Mishnah talks about selling a field, and those things are not included. What do you have to tell me that again for? We already know it. That maybe that's the reason. That's the reason he has to repeat it on ayin aleph is to teach me that idea, which we learned throughout Shas. That Rabbi Kiva holds you sell things generously, and Rabbanan say otherwise. Says the Gemara, no, I'll tell you why you have to say it in both cases. In both cases, the reasons are not because of ayin yafa, generously or not. The reasons are like we described before. That in the case of the reason the seller has to buy it back is because the purchaser doesn't want to buy something and then have the seller trample on his property. And the Rabban's reason is because a person doesn't want to receive money and then have to fly to take a helicopter to get to his pit. So why don't you tell me both cases, both in the case of the house and the sada? You had to tell me both the house and the field. Why? You need both cases, both the house and the field. In the case of the house, do you know why the purchaser doesn't want to buy something and then have the seller trample on his land? Because you're coming next to my house. I don't want you in my yard. I want privacy. Person in his house wants privacy. I don't want people trampling through my yard, looking in through the window. But in the case of the field, what do I care if you trample on the field? Doesn't make any difference. People aren't doing anything private out in the field. And therefore you have to tell me that in case of the field also, yes, I don't want you trampling on my field, even though there's no privacy issue there. And the Yashmin and Sada, if you tell me the case of the field, there you say Bishum the Kashlevasha. I'll tell you why. The purchaser doesn't want the seller trampling on his field because you're ruining my crops. I don't want you trampling on the field, ruining my crops. You're walking on my tomato bed or whatever, my garden, whatever. I will buy you same law. I don't care if you walk on my yard. Maybe I might say I wouldn't mind so much. And according to Rabbi Kiva, the reverse is true. Rabbi Kiva said that the reason is what? That a person doesn't want to sell something. The person doesn't want to. Yeah, that's why we said what. But the reason we said the Yeshmin base, there the purchaser doesn't want people to trample on his land. According to that would be the reason why, from the purchaser's point of view, and from the seller's point of view, it could be that the Rabbanan hold you know what, a person doesn't want to take money and have to fly in there. So here also you could say the same thing. Maybe you would say one thing only by the house, not by the field, or by the field and not by the house because of tznius, right? Because of tznius. And I'd say that in the house, you worried more about tznius, right? But in the field, maybe you wouldn't say that. So therefore, again, we can't prove yet from our Mishnah, both the Reish and the Seifa and the beginning of the next Mishnah, that the reason is because of Ayin Yaf, Ayin Ra. Maybe it's because of these other reasons. Elami Seifa, from the Seifa in the next Mishnah. Machan La'acher, there the Mishnah on Ayin Alpha also goes on to say, if you sold these items in the field, not in the house, you sell it to somebody else, Rabbi Kiva says, the purchaser doesn't have to buy another path to get to those. If he sells, let's say, the pit in the field, the purchaser doesn't have to buy a path to get there because he's entitled to the path too. The chamam tzarich, you have to buy. Hasulam, what do you need that for? It's the same thing as we saw before. There's no extra chiddush over here. You know already that the rules of house and the rules of field are the same, because we said whether it's the house might have tznias, the sada has a question of trampling and ruining the crops, but the same rules apply to both. So once I say the same rules apply to both, what do I need to say for? The reason for the seifa over there is to teach me that Rabbi Kiva holds the seller sells it generously. Again, when he sells a pit in a field, he sells the path with the field with the pit as well, because Rabbi Kiva holds you sell it generously. And the Chum say, Rabbanan say, no, I'm selling it to you sparingly. I sold you the pit. You want the path. You got to purchase that as well. So again, this is where he sold only the pit, where he didn't sell the field. Shema Mino, so you see from the extra case over there that the Rabbanan say from that case that the Rabbanan's reason is because of Ayin Ra, and the Chacham's reason is because of Ayin Yafa. So here, take a look at Rashbam about 12 lines from the bottom of the page. You're going to tell me the reasons because Rabbi Kiva looks at the purchaser's point of view. Even if it works in reverse. That's the same as we learned in the Sefer of our Mishnah. The Masis and Machon Labar Badus, and the our Mishnah where you sold the pit. So that the Rabbanan goes according to Lekech, Rabbanan Azi Basar died to the Mocher. Umeresh min gabi bias, who the gabi sada, the Maresh Daf Sefer, beginning of the Mishnah Ayin Aleph, right? Beginning of the Daf Sefer, the Hainu Lo Mocher as was Meinash Aminan, the Chiyefi Pligi Babais. We saw already the same argument by house is the same argument by Sada. The reasoning for the purchaser not wanting somebody to trample on his land, and the reason for the seller from the Rabbanan's point of view, the seller doesn't want to have to fly to his own pit. The same thing we saw before. So the same reason should apply. My reason is because of Mocher B'ayin Yafa, Mocher B'ayin Ra. Rashbam before that had said, I'm reading Rashbam about 15 lines from the bottom of the page. Mishum dekashli davsha hirduch yesh lagam ken kam l'tech time derisa avol bias emelo. I'm a polygraph akiva. My polygraph akiva kamash malan bias nami meskal derisa shum tzniusa that the also says the Rabbanan nami iklameimer ki I gavna yesh min a bias. This is what I was trying to explain before. If you only take the case of the house, mishum deleka davsha. There's no trampling there. Ve'ein lo taina lo kech. There's no complain, you're not ruining my crops from walking on the land. Therefore, you look at the seller's point of view. That when you sell the when you sell the house and you don't include the pit, that you have to buy the path to the pit because here you have an issue of trampling. Should be like a sneeze. In other words, in the field, there the Rabbanan say if you sell the field that you get the path there because there's no issue of tznius, so you can walk there too. But by a house with issue of tznius, maybe the motor Kiva that the path is not included. Kamash Malan, we see the machlokas in both cases. So from the there's actually four proofs that we have, or four cases. The case of house where he sold the house, not including the pit, or we sold the pit, not including that without the house. We saw the machlokas there. We saw the machlokas in the field the same way. If you sell the field without the pit, and if you sold the pit without the field. But why do you need that fourth case? That's not teaching me anything. If you're telling me that the reason is when you sold the pit, the issue is, do you look at the seller's point of view, do you look at the buyer's point of view? Again, according to the Rabbanan say you look at from the seller's point of view, and the seller doesn't want to have to fly to his own place, right? So from his point of view, he wants to keep for himself the path to his own pit, from his point of view. Kiva Sover Basar Daita Lekech. You look at the Lekech is buying a pit, he wants the path. The Rabbanan say no. You look at the moker's point of view. I'm only selling you what I'm selling you. I'm not selling you any more than that. Rashbam says up above that up above he said that let me see where it is. Let me say Baba, right? And where the lines get wide at the very beginning, he says so he said over there, no, maybe the reason is the Rekiva over time that we look at the Lokech's point of view. Klomer Bein Rabbanan Rekiva, we could either say all these reasons apply of Drisa and Prichas, and we not because of Ayin Yaf or Ayin Ra. The question is, whose point of view do you look at? Do you look at the point of view of the moker, or do you look at the point of view of the seller? Rekiva Savar, you look at the point of Lokech. I'm buying something, I want the path to be included. Rabbanan say, look at the seller. I'm only selling you what I'm selling you. I'm not selling you anymore. So those were all the different reasons brought down. But at the end, we came up because we have a fourth case. It must be because the machlokas is, what's he teaching me? It's teaching me this extra idea that the Rekiva always holds you, that the seller sells it generously, and the Rabbanan say he always sells it sparingly or strictly. Only what I sold you, nothing more than that. You get the car with the wheels and the steering wheel, but not with the jack, not with the spare tire, not with anything else. Itmar, what's the machlok? What's the halacha? Rafuna marab halacha k'derechacham. That ayin ra moker, ayin ra moker. I'm selling it to you just what I'm selling you. Yad balashtar ala tachtona, says the Rashbam, that the guy who bought it, he only gets what's written in the shtar exactly. If you didn't say in the shtar that you get the path, you don't get the path. That's like the Chambra. Yomi Barav Shmuel. So Rav says, Rafuna said the name of Rav that looks like the Chachamim. Rav Yirmiyah Barabba said the name of Shmuel looks like Rabbi Kiva. Okay. Omerle Rav Yirmiyah Barabba Rafuna. So Rav Yirmiyah who said looks like Rabbi Kiva said to Rafuna, who said the name Rav that looks like the Chachamim. Many times I said in front of Rav, Hilchos like Rabbi Kiva. I said looks like Rabbi Kiva. How could you say that Rav says that looks like the Chachamim? I quoted many times in front of Rav that looks like Rabbi Kiva, and he didn't protest at all. Smash with the Rabbi's motive that looks like Rabbi Kiva. So how did you say it? How did you quote it? Amalei Ipcha. So he said it in reverse. Now he didn't actually use it. Rashbam explains that Rav Yirmiyah Barabba didn't say I said it in reverse of what you're saying, because if I said in reverse of what you're saying, it's obvious why Rav didn't protest, because I said the sheet is reversed. That Rabbi Kiva says Mocher Bayin Ra, and the Chum say Mocher Bayin Yafa. Obviously, he didn't say the words Ipcha, but he just said, well, I told him that the halacha is that Mocher Bayin Ra, and he didn't protest. Yeah, that's right. I'm like Ipcha, not that he didn't say the words Ipcha. He just said, he quoted, I said the halacha is that Mocher Bayin Ra. That's why I didn't say anything to you. You had the sheets reversed. You didn't say the halacha is like Rabbi Kiva and Rav was quiet. You said the halacha is that Mocher Bayin Ra. That's why he was quiet, because you learned that Rabbi Kiva says Ra and the Chacham say Yafa. That's why he didn't say anything. So therefore, we're both really saying the same thing. Rav Huna Marav said the halacha is like the Chachamim. Rav Yirmiyah said halacha is like Rabbi Kiva. But Rav Yirmiyah, he says the reason Rav didn't protest because you said it in reverse. Okay, if you say that, in other words, he said it in reverse. He said, he didn't tell him that I possibly Rabbi Kiva, but he said in those words, he said to him that Allah is like Rabbi Kiva. Effectively, he said that, not if he didn't say if the reverse of what you're saying, but he said Allah is like Rabbi Kiva because he thought Rabbi Kiva said that what we have is the Chacham saying, the Mocher Bayin Ra. But in either case, we have machlokas here between Rav and Shmuel. Rav says, halacha k'divrei chacham, Mocher Bayin Ra, and Shmuel says, Mocher Bayin Yafa. Amalei Ravina Rashi blames on the Chard. Do they go according to their own reasoning? In other words, we find this machlokas elsewhere. Let's say brothers split up a Yerusha. They split up a Yerusha. So the father left, let's say, 2 fields or 2 houses, an inner one and an outer one. So each one, Reuben and Shimon, let's say, are 2 brothers. There's no Bechor, let's say. And Reuben says, okay, I'll sell you my share in the inner one. You keep the inner one. And Shimon says, I'll sell you my share in the outer one. They split it that way. You know what? If they split it, it's a final sale. In other words, the inner one has to traverse through the outer one to get to his house. Too bad. He's got to pay for that. Because when he sold it buying up, you get everything. They can't walk through one another's property. They can't use ladders on one another's property. Can't complain about the windows, that your window rights or opening rights. Can't get to the pit of water. What's sold is what's sold. We split it and that's it. Can't anything else. Be careful. Saying that's the halacha. That's what Shmuel said. These are halachas kuas. For Rav Omer yesh lahen. Or says no, they do have a complaint. Why? They have a complaint because when he sold it, he sold by and raw. I didn't mean to include everything. I meant to retain my rights. I wanted to be, when our father had these 2 properties, he was able to walk from one run onto another one. I want the same right now. You can't say that it's totally split and I have to buy back the path to get to my house. So the we see the same machlokas. Rav says yesh lan derech hazeh because mocher ba'ayin raw, and Shmuel says no mocher mi'afai. When I sold it, I sold you generously. I sold you everything, and I have no rights myself on your property. So the we see the same machlokas before. Why do you have to say both? That's what the Tosfos says. Now we have to explain why we need both. The Lo Tuksha, you can say we already argued about this one time. Why do we have to have machlokas again? Why does Rav and Shmuel have to argue about this again? About is halacha like the Chacham or like Rabbi Akiva? We already see this machlokas elsewhere. By this case, Vach and Shechalku says no, it's true. You need both. Yes, Bahi come Rav. There Rav says Mishum Domli Bini LeBeheder Bay Meter Bay Yechdur Avasa. Maybe in that case, Rav says that he sold it cheaply, meaning I didn't sell you everything. I didn't sell it you generously. You know why? Because the inner guy could say, I want to live in this house the same way our father. Our father lived it this way. He was able to get them through your property. I want to be able to do that now too. I'm entitled to. We're splitting it up, but we want to live in it the way our father lived in it. The pasuk says, the children will take the place of the father. So I want to live like that. But in this case, in a regular case, of ayin rough, ayin raw, like in our Gemara, where we're talking about selling a house, is the pit included? The pit's not included. What about the path to the pit? Maybe it's moted to Shmuel there that mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. Everything is included. The path is included too. In other words, like Rabbi Akiva. Be it Shmuel. And if you told me only that case over here, maybe Shmuel says over here, maybe it's moted to Rav in the case of selling the brothers splitting up a share. That because Rav has a good reasoning over there that the inner guy could say, I want to use the house the same way our father did, and therefore mocher ba'ayin ra mocher. I sold you this, but the outer guy sold to the inner guy, when the inner guy sold the outer guy his property, he meant to keep for himself the path because he wants to live in like his father. In both cases, whether it's brothers splitting up a share or you selling a house or a field, not including the pit, we have the same machlok between the Chacham and Rabbi Akiva, and Rav Paskins like the Chachamim, mocher ba'ayin ra, that if he sold it to him, in other words, if I sold you a house, not including I still retain the rights to use the pit myself. I didn't sell it to you generously. That's what the halach according to Rav. That's according to Shmuel. Like Rabbi Akiva. Rav Nachman, who was a student of a Talmud of Shmuel, said to Rav Huna, who was a Talmud of Rav, son is halacha like us, that mocher ba'ayin yafa, or is halacha like you, like Rav Huna Marav. Amalei hilchos hakavasaychu. You, the halachas like you, the mekivus lebaba the reish kalusa, because you are close to the gate of the exilarch, the shchichadana where the judges sit. In other words, he said you are closer to the judges, so you probably heard more what they say. Rashbam about 6 lines into the wide lines. Shmuel Rav Nachman Tamiroya. Is the halachas like us? That's what he said. In other words, Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, is halacha like us or is halacha like you? Amalei, the halachas is probably like you. The mikvah of Reish Kalusa, Rav Nachman Chassan Vesi was the son-in-law of the exilarch, I mean, as he saw how they paskin, so the halacha is probably like you, meaning that like you, that you hold like Rabbi Kiva, that mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. He says halacha is probably like you. It's not clear what the halacha actually is because different opinions is what the halacha is. So he says probably the halacha is like you, but it's not 100% sure how we pass, how the Gemara passes. Gemara doesn't come out with a final answer. All right, we'll pick him here tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.
Good day. Beautiful. So.